me on the stage. To the left of me, a mother whose granddaughter is dying of the human form of mad cow disease in England. To the right of me, a guy from the National Cattlemen's Beef Association points at me and says, here's a man who believes within 10 years we could have a disease that would make AIDS look like the common cold. And I said, absolutely. And she said, that's a strong statement. I said, Oprah, we have 100,000 cows a year, fine at night, dead in the morning. We round them up, grind them up, turn them into feed them back to other cows. We go out and collect roadkill, deer, elk, possum, raccoons, scrape them up off of the street, grind them up, feed them back to cows. And then we take pets, city of Los Angeles, 200 tons of pets full of chemicals that were used to kill them. 200 tons a month are ground up, turned into feed and fed back to our food animals. This time, Oprah's eyes are as big as saucers. I know that I've got her. She turns around and looks at the guy from the National Cattlemen's Beef Association and says, Dr. Weber, are we feeding cows to cows? I never knew what he had to say. He said, well, you know, there's a limited amount of that going on. I believe that about 95% of the cattle fed in factory feedlots are eating the remains of other animals. And the next thing out of Oprah's mouth, damn it, gets us sued. Oprah says, that just stops me cold. I will never again eat a burger. Now, she didn't say, I think the meat's infected. She didn't say to the millions of viewers, you shouldn't eat them. She just said, that stops me cold. I will never again eat a burger. Now, I knew when I went on that show that 13 states had a thing called the food disparagement law. The food disparagement law says that it's against the law to say something you know to be false about a perishable commodity. I didn't say anything I thought to be false. I told the truth. Well, we were taping the show. Took about 2 hours. When we got done taping the show, I walked up to Oprah and I said to her, I said, hey, Oprah, give me 10 minutes. I'll get you off of chicken. Oprah looked at me and said, only one animal a day. So I went about my business. A couple of weeks later, I got a call and they said, do you realize you're being sued with Oprah Winfrey and a Harpo production by a group of Texas cattlemen? And I said, no, can I put you on hold? I raced into my library. I inventoried my vegetarian cookbooks. I knew those cattlemen wanted those vegetarian cookbooks bad. I went back and said, I can't talk to you right now. I got to put in a call to Oprah. I called Oprah and left a message and I said, Oprah, if we lose this suit, I'm going to throw in my vegetarian cookbooks. You got to put up the money. Well, we end up getting sued in Amarillo, Texas. I don't know how many of you have ever been to Amarillo, Texas. It's not the end of the world, but it's clearly visible from there. If you're going to give the world an enema, you take the hose to Amarillo, Texas. The largest employer in Amarillo, Texas happens to be the slaughter facility killing cattle. Bumper stickers all over town said the only mad cow in Texas is named Oprah. I knew we were in trouble and I went and saw my lawyer and I said to him, we need a change of venue. There isn't a way in the world that we can win here in Amarillo. So we filed with the judge for a change of venue. We walk in, there's the judge. 72-year-old lady, a tough old heifer. We asked for a change of venue. She picks up the hammer, slaps it down, says, motion denied. Bring in the jury pool. They brought 140 people in. You never saw so many hats, boots, and belt buckles in all your life. I said to my lawyer, we need to file an appeal because there's no in the world that we're going to win here. At the end of the day, we had 12 jurors absolutely steeped in the cattle culture. My lawyer, he looks at me and he said, They're going to call you to the stand tomorrow. He said, the first question they're going to ask you is whether or not you are a vegetarian. I said, I can handle that. He said, you damn well better. I'm going to lose. Sure enough, the next day they call me to the stand. I'm on the stand. The plaintiff's attorney is looking at me, laughing and giggling, and he says, I can't hardly say this. Mr. Lyman, is it true that you are a vegetarian? And I looked at the jury and said, I will not apologize for something that has saved my life. Never again in that trial did they ever ask me about why I was a vegetarian. But they asked me every question you can imagine. I'm on the stand, and the lawyer looks at me and he says, Mr. Lyman, has anybody ever called you irresponsible? I said, yes. My lawyer's sitting over there going, no, 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 no. The plaintiff's attorney thinks he's found the key to the Gordian knot, and he looks at me and he says, who? I said, my wife. And the jury's over there, been there, done that. We were in that courtroom for 6 weeks. At the end of 6 weeks, that jury found OPRAH, Harpo Production, and myself not liable. The plaintiffs went out of their tree. They could not imagine that that jury, that homegrown jury, could find out-of-towners not liable, and they appeal with the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals. We spent a year in the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, and at the end of the year, they came down with a unanimous panel decision that OPRAH, Harpo Production, and myself were not liable. And then they wrote an opinion, and it said, everything that Lyman said on the show was true, and the truth is not actionable. The cattleman couldn't stand that. Asked for a rehearing. It was denied. And then the cattlemen got together and went to state court and filed suit against OPRAH, Harpo Production, and myself in state court. Thank God I did not live in Texas. I was able to move it from state court to federal court. They appealed that. We spent 6 years, hundreds of thousands of dollars of my money defending the right to tell the truth. At the end of 6 years, the judge finally threw out the case with prejudice, which meant the jury or the plaintiffs could not refile the case, that the statute of limitations had run out. So at the end of 6 years and hundreds of thousands of dollars, we're finally vindicated for standing up and telling the truth. How many of the jurors became vegetarians? You know, it's an amazing thing. We had pictures of the dogs and cats that were going into the rendering process to be ground up that still had their collars on. And the cattlemen fought tooth and nail that we would not be able to show those pictures to the jury. The minute we showed those pictures to the jury, the trial was over. They realized that the idea of euthanizing pets, grinding them up, turning them into feed, and feeding them to the animals we're eating, that the chemicals that were used to kill them were not denatured in the rendering process. All of a sudden they looked at it and said, you know, we're not vegetarians. But we realize that what's happening in the industry is absolutely, totally wrong. And this isn't about everybody becoming a vegetarian. This is about people doing better tomorrow than what they did today. If you have a choice between eating something that is organic, that is raised without herbicides, pesticides, hormones, and medication, is that not better than eating that is coming from the factory feedlots that we have out there? How about genetic engineering? The first genetically engineered product coming to market in the United States of America was called L-tryptophan. People had eaten L-tryptophan for years and years and years, no problem. All of a sudden, Japan looked at it and said, we can make it a lot cheaper if we genetically engineer it. They did it, they brought it to the market, and all of a sudden people started dying from it. People started becoming crippled from it. And when they decided what was wrong and they went to check it out and see what was happening in the plant in Japan, mysteriously they had a large fire that burned the plant, that burned all of the records.